Hi guys. Sorry, I don't know why I'm being so dramatic with my introduction today. Wow, it is really dark here. Sorry. Let me maybe like turn on something lighter on TV so the TV gives me a little bit of light because I oh man, because I don't want to turn on like the entirety of the I don't want to turn on the whole lighting system here. I got a desk lamp that's supposed to arrive here soon. Literally the same one I have in New York on my desk because it's like an LED lamp that you just charge and kind of like bring places with you. And it's really convenient because it's kind of a ring light without the ring. And I ordered one of these. They're pretty cheap and they're very efficient. And I can't wait to get it because there are lots of lights in this apartment that are super duper potent, and they're all this kind of very cold white light, and it is 1:30 in the morning and I'm really not excited to turn on super potent cold white light. So we are kind of sitting in a bit of the dark today. Sorry. Is it unbearable, or can you guys manage that? Heroyam Slava. Hi Debbie, hi Darza, hi Jack, hi Armin, hi Ozzy, hi Demon Orb. I always find it so funny to say hi Demon Orb. Hi Taz, hi Prexis, hi Mr. Spock. So the cat is out of the bag. The position that I've taken with the Ukrainian media company that I have been talking about for a while now is I'm a host of a political talk show podcast on Kyiv Post. It's available on YouTube. It is also going to be available in a voice format, so in audio only format. Hi Naomi, in an audio only format on Spotify and Apple and all that jazz soon, but the first episode is just on YouTube right now. You can watch it on Kyiv Post, and you can also watch it on my YouTube because I've pinned it to the top of my profile. The episode is obviously a dedication to the anniversary of the full-scale invasion, which, if we go by the real events that are happening, then it will truly be 2 years since the beginning of the full-scale invasion in 2.5 hours. As we know, the anniversary is February 24th. The guest on that podcast is Peter Dickinson. He's the editor for the Atlantic Council. He also publishes 2 magazines in Ukraine in English. One is called Business Ukraine, and the other one is called Lviv Today, which I find funny because it's my native city. And he's been living in Ukraine for over 20 years. He's English. And I had a very good conversation with him unpacking basically why it's been 2 years of war and so many people in the West still don't grasp the idea that the only way this war ends with peace is on the battlefield, not at the negotiations table. Also, not oddly, very unsurprisingly, there was an air raid alert. There was an air raid alert. Sorry, I can't speak today. There was an air raid alert in Kyiv a couple of hours ago. It lasted over an hour. There have been some explosions in various different regions of Ukraine. Ukraine also took down 2 Russian aircraft today. One is an A-50 AWACS, which is a control center aircraft, and it is a very, very expensive aircraft. I believe it's like $35 million. Grumpy will know better and will correct me in 3, 2, 1, go. Hi, Grumpy. But it is an expensive piece of machinery. And it is also a detrimental loss to Russia because not only did Ukraine take down the aircraft, we also took down the crew of that aircraft. I am. And because it's an AWACS, so it's a control center, it is a large amount of crew that died on that aircraft, and those are not replaceable. Then there is also an Il-22 that was taken down, and potentially an Su-34, but there is no confirmation there from the Ukrainian military yet. So that's just a potential. That is not a certain. Hi, Veronica. Also, hi, Chad. I just saw you pop up there. Cindy, come here, Baba. Cindy, hey, come here. Cindy, Sin, come here, baby. Cindy, hey, dog. Sorry. Cindy, domanda. Good girl. Also, can you please not show your ass? Maybe like turn around a little bit. Thank you. Personnel hard to replace. Exactly. So, how are you? Your sprava. I'm good. Thank you. Darsa, you were asking if I'm still looking at combat medic work. Yes, but I am looking into various different trainings. I don't want to dive into it with just having one course and just going off. I am planning on volunteering at a hospital, and I am planning on sort of gaining an arsenal of knowledge and understanding and skills before I actually do combat related medical work. But yes, speak to Andrew. He does medical training. Yes, I have. He's phenomenal, and I will reach out to him once things come down a little bit, because I had just moved and there's been so much going on, and I need to. Cindy, thank you. I need to kind of get everything not moving. Actually, I need to get settled for a second, because I feel like I've been kind of going. And I was talking to someone today. I actually met someone who was a colleague of mine for a couple of days, but they quit, which is so sad, because I was really excited to work with them, but that's okay. We did stay in touch, and I'm hoping to work with them on other projects in the future, or just, simultaneously. But so we had lunch today, and one of the things that we both agreed on is that we do not know how to take rest, because we schedule rest, which is like not normal. And even on my days off, I don't ever just sit at home and kind of like relax. I run errands and do things, because I just don't know how to sit there and do nothing. Nor do I like doing that. And then on my rest days, I don't actually rest. And then on the days that I need to go back to work, I'm just sort of like in the same place I was the day before. So yeah, I prioritize rest. That's nice. See, I need to learn how to do that. So yeah, I need to learn how to do that. I need to get better at that, because I fully recognize that. And I know that if I don't, I'm just going to burn out, because that's what's been happening basically in the past, my entire life. I go, then I burn out, and then I keep going. So not healthy, not wise, not good, we got it. So I received 2 donations to the fundraiser during the behind the scenes time. So while not on live, but behind the scene, God, like you get me. I'm sure you get me. So it was a donation of $79 and $20, and that totaled altogether to $9,160. No cents. So, no odd numbers, but for those of you who don't know, we've been fundraising for 6 DJI Mavic 3 Pro drones, and we are well over halfway. So we are at $9,160, and if you would like to donate to this fundraiser and get those drones to 3rd Separate Assault Brigade, it'd be great if we could get to like $9,300 today, or $9,400, which would be $240 worth of donations during the stream, which could work, it could be a thing. Hi, Gord. So you could donate through my link in bio. There is a fundraiser right in there. Grumpy is definitely going to also post it somewhere in the TikTok comments, so you'll be able to see it. And if you are on YouTube, Ozzy just posted the link in the comments, and I will pin it in a second once someone else comments, because there is a like button right where the pin button is, and it is super user not friendly interface or experience. And I, as a trained user experience designer, really freaking hate that little bit. And if it were up to me, I would freaking redesign it. Thank you, Ian. That was super helpful. Pin message, live streams all day today. Well, yeah, because it's the anniversary of the full-scale invasion, so that makes sense. Also, John, I did see the Venmo, but I did not see how much the Venmo was because it didn't show me on the thing. So if you could tell me what the amount of the donation was, I could add it up to the total. Hi, Gord. Hi, Martin. Hi, Michael. Hi, Auntie. Oh my gosh, good to see you. Hi, Ian. Hi, John 101. Oh my gosh, of course. So John, in his best tradition of screwing up even numbers and making them odd, donated $1.01, which, hey, fantastic donation. But we are now at $9,161.01. And he definitely did that on purpose. We do know what he likes to do. Hi, Mark. Welcome, everybody. For those of you who missed it, if you go to the top of my profile on YouTube, to the top of my page, or if you go to Discord or my community tab on YouTube, I have shared the video, a new video that I've made with Kyiv Post, where I now host a podcast called Talking Substance, which is a political, cultural talk show where I'm hoping to do with this podcast is I'm hoping to kind of stop scratching the surface with the news and political currents and the things that are going on, and dive much deeper into all things that are connected to Ukraine. For instance, in one of the episodes, I have invited a friend of mine to, well, the episode is obviously still not 11 years in the US. It's been 13. Also, oh, wow, you watched the podcast. That's awesome. So the podcast is on YouTube for those of you who are on TikTok and do not have a link to it. It's called Talking Substance, and it's on Kyiv Post's YouTube. And so one of the topics that I really want to cover is accessibility in Ukraine for veterans, wounded veterans, in other words, disabled veterans, and rather lack thereof, because we are a post-Soviet satellite states and a lot of our cities have been built in the Soviet manner. And obviously they're being updated and rebuilt and built over and stuff. But a lot of these cities were not meant to be accessible, because in the Soviet Union, if you were disabled, you were shipped quite literally. You were either kept at home away from people's eyes, or thank you, Paul, or you were shipped off to an island with disabled people. So veterans of war in the Soviet Union who came back with injuries would be shipped off to an island with other disabled veterans, so no one would see them, because in the Soviet Union everything was great and war didn't exist and war casualties didn't exist, and everything had to look and stay perfect. So Paul just donated $100, and that brings us to $9,261.01, which is phenomenal. I'm like, the auction people, the people who host auctions, can we get 9,300? How is Ukraine doing right now? Well, there was an air alert, and there were Shahed drones heading towards Kyiv a couple of hours ago. I was monitoring the situation. Then the air alert was over. I am expecting that in the coming days there is going to be quite a few um, quite a few oh, sorry, I'm like reading a comment and I got distracted. For those of you who don't know me, I have severe ADHD, so welcome to my world. Mr. Squiggle, hello. Hi, Liquid. I YouTube Talking Substance, and it gave me a message saying I'm not alone and to call a hotline. Oh my gosh, look up Kyiv Post, and it's one of the first videos there, if not the first. I think it's pinned. I can't believe they got another A50. Very embarrassing. Yes, they did. The Ukraine has been doing this thing. Ukraine has been doing this thing. Thank you, Paul. Ukraine has been doing this thing where we have been. I just don't want to, because the credit is definitely not mine or civilian by any means. But Ukraine has been doing this thing where our military has been planning this trick operations in order to 2841 1 second. In order to lure the AWACS A50s out and then take them down. But this AWACS was taken down over the territory of Russia. So it's very interesting. We don't know the exact details, but there is some interesting weapon trickery involved there, because it has to be quite a long range weapon that would take it down, or a Patriot had to have been moved somewhere very convenient to take it down, although it was quite deep in. So there was a donation of $28 and some cents. I knew that I would forget, so I added it to the total immediately, and we are at $9,289.42. Okay. Also, would anyone remind me, please, what I was talking about when I said that I'm severely ADHD and I started reading a comment about the podcast? I think I was talking about the Soviet Union and how in the Soviet Union, disabled people didn't exist. Anyone who was different didn't exist, right? And all of these things were hidden. So that brings me to 1 second, wait, I actually need to respond. I need to respond to John Aravosis, because I asked him to mention the podcast on his live, and he's asking me what the podcast is called. Yes. Sorry, I had to respond to this because I asked John Aravosis. If you guys don't know him, he is he's also on YouTube. He does nightly lives as well, and he talks about Ukraine. He's also talked about Israel and Palestine quite a few times, and he does a nightly show, and he's great. And so I asked him to mention the podcast during his live, and I messaged him, and I had forgotten because I started this live and I just forgot that I messaged him. And so he is currently mentioning it on his live, and so he asked what the name of the podcast was, and I was like, I can't not respond because I asked him to do it, and now he's doing it and I'm not answering. So yeah, so there is that. John Aravosis. Between you two, hi Ali. So we got another donation of $6.29, which brings us to $9,295.71, which is phenomenal. Thank you very much. Sorry, I didn't see who. I think it was Paul who donated. I think it was Paul. Hi, Lynn. Also, hi, Travis. Good to see you. And hi, Leslie. Good to see you. Good to see you here. Okay. There were questions and I forgot again. Hi, Yulia. Yes. Hi. Hello, Yulia. Sorry, just curious, but how do you study when dealing with ADHD? Well, in college, so here's the thing: ADHD is different across the board, right? Obviously, most people have similar ADHD symptoms, and they share certain characteristics, but ADHD is very different for everyone. I do have a lot of anxiety. I have ADHD. I'm mildly OCD. So anxiety medicated, so no anxiety right now. But in the studying, the only issues I had studying were sort of with subjects that I was not interested in at all. Oh, thank you so much. So my kind of situation is my ADHD brain works in a way where it's either 0 or 100. If I enjoy something, I'll give it my 100. If I don't enjoy it, it'll be 0. So it was really hard for me to study subjects that I had to take in the US, like chemistry, while I was like, a psych major and a and while I did design, because that was not anything that I was interested in at all. So I don't know how to give advice in terms of how to focus when you do that, because I had a really hard time doing it. But for instance, subjects like English, like design, like psychology, like sociology, things like that were always very interesting to me. So I would hyper focus on them. History, I hyper focused on political science, things like that. So humanities were always my hyper focus. Okay, so I tried to fix John's mistake, but now there has been several more. Oh my gosh. How old were you when you moved to the US? I was 16. Also, hi everybody who came from John Aravosis, and everyone who's mentioning the podcast. And John is so sweet to do it. That's very, very sweet of him. I'm very thankful to him for mentioning it on his stream, because I did ask him to do that. How are you doing at home? I'm doing great at home. Actually, I really love being in Ukraine, and I don't see living anywhere else at the moment. I'm very happy to be here, and I don't know. It's very interesting, because if you had asked me before the full-scale invasion if I see myself coming back to Ukraine and living in Ukraine, I would give you a hard resounding no. And that is not for reasons of not loving Ukraine or not caring for Ukraine. It's just that I have built a life in the United States, and I have been living there for a very long time. It's at the time of the full-scale invasion, it was 12 years. 2632 plus 2632. So we're at $9,322.03. Someone asked you for your PayPal. Hey guys, could someone please send the PayPal address in the comments of YouTube? Thank you very much. Sorry, it's just that if I stop right now talking about what I was talking about, I will lose the thought, and can't do that because I've done that so many times. What am I fundraising for? 6 DJI Mavic Pro drones for 3rd Separate Assault Brigade. If you want to know everything about the fundraiser or want to know more, the link is in my bio. It's beacons.ai/fundraiser, or in my bio, it's /Yewleea, and there is the link to the fundraiser. So there is more information, and we're at $9,322.03. I have lots of friends in 3rd Assault Brigade, and yeah. So there's that. Sorry. So I was talking about, what was I talking about? Oh yeah, so at the time of the full-scale invasion, I was in the US for 11 or 12 years at that point, and I had a whole life built there. I had, a job, education, and just friends, and, 12 years of life in the US. And so I was very happy there, and I was very used to being in the US, and I don't know, I have a whole life in the US, right? But then the second that the full-scale invasion started, and something inside of me just kind of switched, and a switch flipped. And also at that point, I was waiting for my green card, so I couldn't leave the US to go home to Ukraine and help out and volunteer. So that's kind of what I started doing. I started doing the news, and I started explaining some political currents in Europe to an American audience that needed some clarifications on certain things. And I would wait for my dad to wake up because 7 hours ahead, or rather New York is 7 hours behind. And we would all kind of sit on a live stream and talk about the news. And that was a way for me to cope. And that was also a way for me to help people understand Ukraine and everything that happens politically and geopolitically around Ukraine and stuff like that. And then once I was able to come to then once I was able to come to Ukraine, which happened this August when I got my green card, I came home, and I really haven't felt this happy in the past since the beginning of the full-scale invasion. And I just sort of felt alive because, truthfully, while being in New York, while being in the US in the past 2 years, it felt very lonely, and it felt very difficult because sort of like the life that I knew that didn't exist anymore, because my life was in my technology screen, making sure that the people that need help are being helped, that my family is okay, that my friends are okay, that everything is okay. And wait, 2797. Sorry. Plus 2797. I just the total is $9,350. Someone evened it out. So thank you. $9,350. So so by the time, so basically it's not to say that the US is bad or people around me are bad, right? But it's just my friends there and society in general, after a couple of months, sort of like moved on, and it wasn't, Ukraine wasn't making front pages and headlines every day, right? But for me, it was making front pages and headlines in my life and in my view. Thank you so much, Emmy. Oh my gosh, thank you. Because I am Ukrainian and my family was and is in Ukraine. And when I say my family, I didn't move to the US with my parents. I moved there for like end of high school and then college. And so I was the only person out of my family who lived abroad. And I was born and raised in Ukraine. And so, for me, it was my entire existence. I stopped wanting to go out. I stopped wanting to communicate with people. I stopped wanting to see my friends, and I was living the war in Ukraine, and I was living Ukraine from my bedroom in New York. And, it's not healthy. It's really not healthy for anyone. And it's also not good because at a certain point, I stopped really knowing how to talk to people that are not connected to the war in Ukraine and that are not Ukrainian, or people who are not connected to it, or people who are not following it every day, or people who are not who don't realize the magnitude and the extent of what's been happening. And then I came home for the first time in a very long time, because again, I've been waiting for my green card for years and years, and it was a really, really long process. And I came home, and it's funny because Grumpy, a research assistant for the podcast, he told me, you're gonna move home. And I was like, no, I'm not going to move to Ukraine. I mean, I have a whole life in the United States. I would not do that. That's just wild. That's not what is going to happen. And then I came home, and the second that I crossed the border, it's 2 years worth of anxiety and all of these really, pent up emotions just came out, and I genuinely felt happy. And it's I'm in a war zone. I'm going back home to a war zone. Everything at home had changed. I haven't been to my childhood home after my parents got a divorce because they got a divorce while I was abroad. So there were all of these things, everything is so different, and I don't know. And then I went back to New York, I got my dog, and now I'm here. And at the moment, I just want to be here. Can you describe the moment you got to know about the war? Yeah, my dad called me. So, first of all, February 23rd, 2022, in the morning, I found out I had COVID for the first time since the pandemic. I was asymptomatic, but I found out I had COVID because I had to meet a colleague for lunch and discuss some stuff. And he was traveling back to London. And so I was sneezing. And I thought to myself, I am going to take the test just because, to be safe, because, you never know. And he is about to take a flight. So I should be responsible and do that, fully expecting the test was going to be negative because I was just sneezing. And the test came out positive. So I got COVID on February 23rd, 2022. And then at about, I want to say, thank you, Chad, at about midnight. No, not midnight. So in the weeks leading up to the full-scale invasion, a lot of my friends in the US have been texting me, and asking me if Putin is going to invade, if Russia is going to invade. They were sort of equating the situation to China and Taiwan. A lot of people were asking me all these questions, and all of them were like, are you okay? Is your family okay? Right? Like, they were just kind of like anxiously worried and resembling text messages of like, people who have no idea what they're talking about. And so I just sort of got so tired of answering those text messages. And then it was a very long work day because I was a creative director. And I worked in UX design, and there was a project that was, the deadline for that project was coming up, and I was like fully working. It was probably like 10 p.m. and I was working really hard, and I also had COVID. So thank you, Chad. Oh my God, that's so cute. And it was one of those like really, really chaotic days. And I started receiving a ton of text messages from people asking me if I'm okay and if my family is okay. And they were about Ukraine and about, Russia and stuff. And I just sort of like, I kept seeing these text messages pop up, and I was like so into work. I had to like finish this project, or I wanted to finish this project. And I was just sort of like, oh my gosh, what is it today that all of these people are suddenly so interested in Ukraine? Like, Jesus Christ. And I didn't even think that it's because the news broke out that Russia had attacked Ukraine, because I was so into work that I just thought that all of these Westerners who were my friends started catching up with the news and are suddenly freaking out about Russia potentially invading Ukraine. And then at about 1 a.m. or 2 a.m., I put away my phone and I continued working. At about 2 a.m. or something, my dad calls me, and I receive a phone call from my dad, and it's 2 a.m. and he doesn't call me at that time because he knows that it's late. So I get immediately, like, I get this sinking feeling because he's calling me at 2 a.m. and I pick up the phone, and he, in a very trembling voice, and my dad is the type of person who he's kind of like, don't tell him I said that. He's kind of misogynistic in that way, where he's not going to tell me bad news because he's not going to want to worry me because I'm a girl and I'm his daughter. And he called me with this like trembling voice, and he said, Yulia, the war has started. And I can't describe the feeling of like the overwhelming anxiety and like your heart dropping, when they say like my heart, when someone says my heart dropped, I think that most of the people actually don't know what that feels like. They just know that it's a thing to say when you are incredibly worried. My heart literally dropped. Like, I could feel everything in my body sinking. And I was like, what do you mean? And he said, what do you mean? What do I mean? There are tanks coming into Ukraine and it's a full-scale war. And I've heard explosions. And he's like rambling, and he's like, listen, I'm running against time. I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't know what to do, but I'll call you when I can. And he hung up. And at that point, I like, it's one of those things where it sounds so cliche, but I just was standing next to a wall, And I sort of just slid down the wall, and I was sitting in my bedroom. Like, I wasn't even crying at that point. I had no response. I didn't know what to do. They live in Lviv. But at that point, there was, Russia was coming in from Belarus. No one knew what was going to happen. Explosions were everywhere in every city in Ukraine. So it's not, it's not like it is right now. And I kind of like didn't know what to say. I didn't know what to do. I froze. I literally froze, and I picked up my phone. I started crying. I looked up Russia attacks Ukraine, and then all of these articles started popping up about Kyiv being bombed, and all of these videos of tanks and all this footage and all this stuff. I went on social media, and on Instagram there were all of these videos from people just sort of like explosions in Kyiv and stuff, and all of the major news networks were reporting it. I didn't know what to do. I just, when I was watching 20 Days in Mariupol last summer, or this summer, this past summer, one of the things that really triggered me was that at some point in the very beginning of the documentary, they show you footage of how the world was reporting and what's happening in Ukraine, and it's just sort of this never-ending stream of videos and photos and reporters talking about Russia attacked Ukraine, Russia attacked Ukraine, Russia attacked Ukraine. And that was the moment that triggered me very much, because that is exactly how I experienced the invasion of my country. I was far away and I couldn't do anything. I didn't know what was happening to my family. I did not know whether my grandparents were okay. My mom and my aunt were stuck in Egypt because they were on a vacation. I didn't know. This is how I experienced it, exactly like that, going online and seeing all of these major news agencies report that the war has started and Russia had attacked Ukraine. So that was very triggering for me. For those of you who haven't watched 20 Days in Mariupol, it is an incredibly, incredibly, incredibly powerful documentary made by frontline journalists who stayed behind in Mariupol, knowing full well that it's going to get encircled and fully expecting to not come out of there alive, but they wanted to document it to show the truth because they knew that otherwise no one would see it. And they stayed for 20 days. And that documentary is horrifying, it's intense, and it just touches you to your core. But it's only the first 20 days. I posted a video on TikTok today because something really dawned on me hardcore when I remembered a couple of months ago in October, I think, I was getting borscht with my friend Vlad, better known as call sign Wikipedia, and his name is Vlad Zhayvronok, and he is a former Azov regiment serviceman who stood in the defense of Mariupol, and he was also in Azovstal, and he got a tremendous injury on his last day right before they were evacuated from Azovstal, and he lost his leg and his eye. And so he not virtually, but literally stood in the defense of Mariupol all 85 days of it. And I asked him in October when we were eating borscht on Khreshchatyk, which is like such a cliche too, but there is actually a great restaurant on Khreshchatyk that serves the best borscht I've had in Kyiv so far in a restaurant. So we were getting that, and I asked him, I was like, Vlad, have you watched 20 Days in Mariupol yet? And he said, 20 days in Mariupol, watched it. Why would I? I was there for 2.5 months. And he's like, the first 20 days were peachy. And I remembered, it dawned on me to like, I was reading so many reviews and so many foreigners talking about 20 Days in Mariupol and how much it horrified them. And I've made videos about how important it is to watch it for us Ukrainians, because it is. But I remember today him saying that, and I realized that one of the things that I really do want to put out there to the Western audiences is that when you watch 20 Days in Mariupol, and when you're horrified over what you're seeing on the screen, what you need to remember is what you're seeing is horrid, but what you're not seeing is even more horrid, because these are 20 days out of 85, and it kept getting worse and worse and worse with every day, especially when most of the city was ruined and the only thing standing was Azovstal. There are things that we will never know about Mariupol because the people who could tell us didn't make it out. There are things we're going to discover during the deoccupation of Mariupol that are going to be incredibly, immensely traumatizing, because there are so many bodies that Russia had literally constructed their new builds on, that they're rebuilding with. There are things that we will find out once we discover all of the mass graves and what's been happening there, and how many people are in those mass graves. There are so many things that we don't know and will never know about Mariupol, and so many awful, atrocious things that we have yet to discover. So yeah, one of the things that I really want to point out and I want to stress before we talk about the news for the day is I often hear a lot of Westerners saying that it's time to negotiate to end the war because, peace and all that. And that form of pacifism really drives me crazy. And that form of pacifism is this kind of on paper pacifism that really doesn't translate into real life and actually isn't pacifism at all. The only way this war ends with peace is in complete destruction of Russia on the battlefield and complete Ukrainian victory in Ukrainian terms, because lack of military action doesn't mean peace. What these pacifists are advocating for is not peace. They are advocating for lack of military action. We've done that. We've done lack of military action in 2014, and there are torture chambers in Donetsk that we have yet to actually get to, that we only heard about. People on the occupied territories are not going to live in peace. They're going to be tortured, killed, and many other things for speaking their native language. They already are being tortured and killed for speaking Ukrainian. They're being tortured for liking Ukraine. They're being tortured for speaking to their relatives back in Ukraine. Their kids are being re-educated to hate Ukraine. Their kids are being indoctrinated into Russian Nazism. Their kids are being re-educated into absolutely despising Ukraine and thinking that Ukraine doesn't exist as a nation. That is not peace. That is torture. That is complete and utter torture. And it's also genocide. That is one of the markers of a genocide. Also, people in the occupied territories are being drafted into the Russian military to go and fight against their own country. So next time you advocate for peace, know that the only way to achieve peace with Russia is by destroying it on the battlefield. We also don't want to be dying on the front lines. We also don't want explosions in our cities. I also don't want to receive messages from my mom telling me to go shelter in the bathroom or in the bathtub. I don't want to sit here at 2:15 having lots of anxiety and doing a news stream, knowing that there is going to be an air raid sometime soon at 4 in the morning. So there is no point in sleeping anyway, because today is the anniversary of the full-scale invasion, and I'm in the capital. So obviously Russia is going to be doing something drastic. So, we also don't want that. We want our best men and women doing their best and thriving at their jobs. We don't want them dying or getting injured at the front. We don't want their mental health to suffer. We don't want any of these things, right? But signing any sort of agreements with Russia means nothing because Russia doesn't abide by the agreements they sign. What's Russia's promise that they won't attack? It's nothing. Also, giving Russia land only encourages Russia to go further because they are being unpunished for their conquest, for their illegal conquest. So yeah, this war ends in peace only on the battlefield, unfortunately, and it makes me kind of laugh. It's funny and sad at the same time when I hear people in the West say that Ukrainians just want the war to continue and we're warmongers. I invite all of those people to come and live in Ukraine for a month and see how you like it. Because even on days that there isn't massive shelling of cities like Kyiv or Lviv, or the cities that are generally considered safer, you wake up in the middle of the night most nights to the air raid. And it's torturous because you don't get sleep and you get woken up. And by the time you get used to this schedule, even if there isn't an air raid, you wake up at 4 a.m. because your brain thinks there is an air raid and your brain is used to waking up at 4 a.m. So yeah, that's sort of, that's life here. And someone had asked me the other day, what's it like to be Ukrainian? And I had many answers, and I think that the best answer that I can give, that I thought about actually, is being Ukrainian up until February 24th and often after that feels like you don't have a voice to speak for yourself, and that the opinion about you has been made before you have even entered the room to tell people your story. Because the opinion of people about Ukrainians and Ukraine has been formed through Russia's lens. And your opinion about yourself and your own country is being disregarded, and your identity is being disregarded over the people who are there in the room with you who are Russian, whose authority on who you are is considered to be stronger. And no matter what you say about yourself, about your country, about the stereotypes about your country, about anything, people are going to take Russia's word and their preconceived notions formed through Moscow's lens over anything you say, because you are just a random little person from a little country that thinks it's independent while it's actually a part of Russia. And that's what it feels like being Ukrainian. So yeah. Yulia, do you have news on the annexed cities like Mariupol? What's their situation? Their situation is horrid. They do not have heat and hot water. They do not have electricity. Most of the buildings have not gotten windows installed yet. Ukrainian people are not getting apartments and are not getting places to live. It's Russians that are being relocated there, and a lot of the people have been brainwashed into thinking that it's Ukraine's fault because they live in Russia's information bubble. A lot of people are still dissenting and waiting for the armed forces of Ukraine to come in, but in general, life in those areas is awful because it's an open air concentration camp where your every move is being watched and your phones are being checked and you get randomly stopped and frisked on the streets. And yeah, there's that. In the meanwhile, The armed forces of Ukraine received a promised batch of dozens of M113 armored personnel carriers from Spain. These armored personnel carriers were especially converted to evacuate the wounded from the battlefield. Dozens of these armored evacuation vehicles have already arrived in Ukraine. Several hundred more are expected in the near future, Minister of Defense of Ukraine noted. France will host an international conference to support Ukraine, office of the country's President Macron. Leaders of European states and members of governments are invited to the conference, which will take place shortly after the second anniversary of the start of the full-scale Russian invasion of Ukraine. Its mission is to explore available means to strengthen cooperation in support of Ukraine. As AFP reports, Polish President Andrzej Duda said he would take part in the conference to discuss new proposals for assistance and solutions for Ukraine. The F-16s are coming to Ukraine soon. Exclusive footage of Ukrainian pilots training in Denmark has been posted on United 24 Media YouTube channel. In July 2023, Ukraine and several other countries formed a so-called F-16 coalition. The coalition is led by the United States, Denmark, and the Netherlands. The coalition is working on the transfer of aircraft, training of pilots, and maintenance personnel, and preparation of infrastructure. United 24 Media traveled to Denmark to meet the Ukrainian pilots who were selected for this great responsibility and to see how training on the world's most popular fighter jet is. Lots of promises, deliveries, not as reliable as the promises, unfortunately. Yes, and that's the reason why it's so hard for Ukraine to plan and conduct offensive actions or even defensive actions, because we don't know when we're getting what, and we don't know if we're getting it in the right quantities, because we're being promised a lot. We're being overpromised and under-delivered, and Ukrainians and Ukrainian lives suffer significantly from that. Also, you guys, I have been receiving some donations, and we are at $9,376.95. Do we think we could get it to $9,400? Also, Travis, I see what you're trying to do there, but unfortunately, by the time that you sent the evening out amount, it actually didn't even it out. And yes, my dog is snoring. At night, the Russians attacked the Odessa region with attack drones. One of the drones struck over the sea, fell on the building of an enterprise in the coastal zone of Odessa, causing destruction and fire. The rescuers rescued the security guard and found the bodies of 3 dead people. The European Union has approved its 13th package of sanctions against Russia, targeting 106 individuals and 88 legal entities. The entities and individuals listed are primarily associated with the military and defense sector. They're implicated in activities such as the supply of weapons from the DPRK to Russia, as well as the deportation and concealment of Ukrainian children. One of the largest markers of genocide is deportation and education of children, and Russia has been doing exactly that. Russia has been kidnapping and deporting children to Russia and to Belarus and re-educating them. Was there any particular reason as to why you chose Kyiv instead of Lviv? Because there is a lot more that I can do in Kyiv as opposed to Lviv. There are a lot more news agencies where I can be useful in Kyiv as opposed to Lviv, and Lviv is a very small city, and it's not very small, actually. It's not a small city, but it's just like, it's a very slow, kind of a relaxed vibe, very European looking city, resemblant of like Prague and Vienna and Paris. And it's sort of like, it's very relaxed, while Kyiv is dynamic, and Kyiv is always on the go. And Kyiv is just, I'm more used to a city like Kyiv than I am to a city like Lviv at this point, because I've lived in New York for 13 years. So Lviv is just too slow. Do you think Ukraine could change the alphabet for the Latin one? No, I don't think so. We take a lot of pride in our alphabet, and it's part of our history, and it's Cyrillic. It is just what it is. There was a $20 donation, and we are at $9,396.95. In Poland, unidentified individuals have once again discarded Ukrainian agricultural products on the ground at the Dorogusk station, as reported by Minister of Infrastructure Kubrakov. The incident involved the opening of 3 grain trucks carrying rapeseed, which were in transit to Germany through Hamburg. So there is actually a lot of evidence that quite a few of these Polish protesters are active KGB agents. Sorry, FSB, oopsie doopsie, they did rename themselves, just the same way as the Soviet Union renamed itself to Russian Federation, and the same way as the Russian Empire renamed itself to the Soviet Union. So KGB/FSB agents are literally some of the people pretending to be the Polish farmers who are conducting these protests. There is actually tons of evidence of that, and there is one of the FSB agents that has been tracked, like his photo as a Polish farmer has been tracked and traced, and all of his information has been shared, and it's been proven and shown that he is actually an FSB agent. And I will share that on Twitter just so you guys know after the stream, so you can look it up. Also, if you want to know more about Russia's subversion tactics and Russia's tactics of how they influence the West, and how their propaganda ends up working, and how they get people in democratic countries to do what Russia wants and to be helpful to Russia, they use the tactic of useful idiots, and they call it useful idiots. And that's what they call Westerners. And that's also what they have done since the dawn of ages in order to influence Western media, in order to influence the perception of Russia, and in order to get people to behave in a way that they want them to behave. Obviously, they also pay people off to do their dirty work and to protest and to pretend like they're pro or contra certain causes. So on my YouTube, I have shared, in my community tab, I have shared an interview with a KGB agent who was a defector in the 1970s, which is incredibly hard to do, and he had to do this incredibly difficult thing in order to be able to defect. And his story is phenomenal, and his name is Yuri Bezmenov, and if you look it up on YouTube, so if you are on YouTube, you can find the interview linked in my community tab. If you're not on YouTube, then you can just look him up. The video is called "Full Interview with Ex-KGB Yuri Bezmenov: The 4 Stages of Ideological Subversion." That's what it's called, and it literally explains to you exactly how the Soviet Union would get the information that the Soviet Union wanted into free world's press, and exactly how they would manipulate people and people's perceptions of the Soviet Union, and sort of like how they would manipulate people to do what they wanted them to do. It is an incredibly, incredibly interesting interview. We are also going to do a watch party of this interview, probably either next week or next weekend. Okay, so we just got another $20 donation, and we are at $9,416.95. Democrat Chuck Schumer, the leader of the majority in the US Senate, has arrived in Lviv. Oh, hi, Chucky. Chuck Schumer is my senator because I'm from New York, and he is in my hometown, which is kind of cool. I'm leading this delegation to meet with Zelensky to show Ukrainians that America has their backs, to show our NATO and European allies that we stand by them, to learn about the weapons that Ukraine vitally needs, and to protect our democracy and national security, he stated. Really? Well then, Chucky, as a resident of New York still, and as a Ukrainian citizen, I implore you to please beat some sense into your Republican, MAGA-loving, fascist, and Putin-serving colleagues, and have them approve the Aid for Ukraine package, because that package can make or break the literal course of history So, yeah. The Prime Minister of Denmark joined Zelensky in honoring the memory of the fallen defenders of Ukraine at the Field of Mars in the Lychakiv Cemetery. So, Marsova Pola is a military burial ground in Lychakivsky Cemetery in Lviv. And that is where usually people who are from Lviv or from around Lviv, thank you so much, are buried when they die at the front lines. And today, the cemetery and the graves of people, of soldiers, of fallen soldiers, have been lit up with these projector lights, and it was beautiful, and I wish I would be there to see it, but I've seen it on my friends have sent me some pictures and stories because some of our friends are buried there, and it was a beautiful sight to see. I mean, it's bitter and beautiful, but it's but it is what it is. Yeah. We received another donation of $15 and some cents. So we're at $9,432.17. President Zelensky remarked that Trump would not be able to end the Russian war against Ukraine in 24 hours and reiterated his call for Trump to visit Ukraine and witness the tragedy firsthand. Zelensky expressed his belief that if Trump had visited Ukraine and witnessed the situation firsthand, he would have revised his perception of the conflict's swift resolution. Furthermore, Zelensky emphasized that there are no two sides in this war, but rather one enemy, namely Putin's position. I mean, here's the thing. Zelensky knows full well, just like everybody else, that Trump is just a vassal of Russia, and that no, his opinion wouldn't change if he came to Ukraine, because it's not like he is a reasonable human being who would come here and realize the wrongdoings that they have behind their backs. He would just not care, and he would just simply not come to Ukraine because he's a coward. But of course, Zelensky has to say that because diplomacy is something that he has to do as president. Ukraine has inked a landmark security pact with Denmark, third one after the UK and Germany, marking the first agreement of its kind with a nation outside of the G7. US President Joe Biden has announced new sanctions against Russia. These are actually important because they're aimed at closing the loopholes. More than 500 new sanctions will apply to individuals connected to Navalny's imprisonment. Oh no. Oh, sad. Russia's financial sector, defense industrial base, procurement networks, sanctions evaders across multiple continents. We are also imposing new export restrictions on nearly 100 entities for providing backdoor support for Russia's war machine. We are taking action to further reduce Russia's energy revenues, Biden said in a statement published on the White House website. Russia procures tank parts from Japan and Taiwan via China. The publication Nikkei Asia points out that in China, a person connected to the government of Belarus set up a company, and the Russian arms maker has continued to import parts via the company. The information reveals that sanctions aimed at Russia's munition industry are not functioning effectively due to trades through a third country. US and British authorities are aware of the situation and are expected to tighten the sanctions. Oh, thank you, Chad. And whether that's going to do something or not, we don't know, because, there are so many sanctions and so many loopholes, and Russia just continues to set up shop in different countries and avoiding them. It is 2:35 in the morning, and I'm expecting like a serious air raid at around 5 a.m. or something, because that's a reasonable time for Russia to start striking on Ukraine Independence Day. On the anniversary of the full-scale invasion into Ukraine. So I do need to start heading to bed, because if I don't, I'm going to be in for a rough awakening. I am going to the opening of a memorial tomorrow that's called the Crest of Heroes, and it's outside of Kyiv, and I have to be ready by 1:30 p.m. to go there. And thank God I have a ride, because if I didn't, that would be really difficult, because it's quite far. But at the same time, and I know it's not early, but I do need to sleep well, and I do need to record quite a bit of material there. And it is the anniversary of the full-scale invasion. I'm going to try and see Rick on Maidan. He asked me to come as well. That's at noon. So I'm really hoping to get some sleep. Oh, I'm going to repeat for those of you who didn't see it. There is a new, actually, there is a pilot, so a premiere episode of my new podcast called Talking Substance. It's a podcast hosted with Kyiv Post, and it's hosted on their YouTube channel. So if you would like to see my first episode dedicated to the anniversary of the full-scale invasion and 10 years of Russia's invasion into Ukraine, it's on Kyiv Post's channel, and the podcast is called Talking Substance, but you're probably going to have an easier time finding it on YouTube by just typing in Kyiv Post, and it's a pinned video on the channel. It's the guest on the talk show is Peter Dickinson, and he's fantastic. He's brilliant, and we talk a lot about all the things that we still haven't learned 2 years into the war, and we kind of summarize and reflect on everything that happened. It's a really good conversation, and I really enjoyed it. So I really hope that you do give it a watch. If you are on YouTube, then it's in my community tab, and it's also pinned to my profile. And if you would like to donate, you still can, and you always can outside of streams. I will always mention it when I start streaming. But we are today at $9,432.17. And one of you has the ability to fix the 17-cent situation, because I know you guys hate the odd numbers. But anyways, thank you very much for watching. Thank you. Oh. Thank you for being here, and I will see you guys tomorrow. All right. Okay. Bye, guys. Bye. Oh, good night. Thank you, Chad. Oh, bye, guys. Good night.